Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, and I am super excited to be streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy podcast studio and to have Martin Pytela on today to talk about Life Enthusiast and how it treats chronic disease. So, Martin, go ahead and welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Right. So I'm the CEO of two companies. One is called Life Enthusiast, and that's the public side of things, where we have a website, life-enthusiast.com, where we try to explain to people that most diseases, other than wounds and car accidents, are really metabolic diseases, stuff that happens as a consequence of four main categories. When I try to sort it into a box where I say toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. All four need to be resolved for the normal or homeostatic functioning of the body can be restored. So if you have any of these problems, you need to sort through them. The other company I have is called Exula Foods, and there we manufacture superfoods, where we try to take care of that point number two, the malnutrition caused by our industrial age production methods.
So many times in these health journeys, it starts with ourselves. Did you have a health journey of your own to kind of come to realize, what needed to happen in order to make some changes?
Yeah, I was a happy engineer, a happy nerd. I'm educated in computer science and business administration. But at 25 years of age, I went to see a dentist, and I trusted the professional. He had a diploma and a white coat, and he gave me a gift. Well, he said to me, "Hey, listen, your insurance covers the silver fillings. The white ones are extra. Do you care?" And I said, "No, they're the same to me. I don't care." Well, they were not the same to my body. Mercury amalgam fillings are one of the most toxic things you can do to yourself, especially if you have genetics like mine, which is a poor methylator. So I went downhill real hard. I became very broken. And so at some point, of course, I went to the doctors, the mainstream. Then because my body was falling apart, I was having things like carpal tunnel syndrome, plantar fasciitis. My back was going out all the time. I saw chiropractors a lot. And then I started getting allergies. So I saw a naturopath, because the mainstream doctor said, "Yeah, we can give you Sudafed." I said, "Will that heal it?" He said, "No, that's just for your life." So at some point, I had this meeting with myself where it was, "Martin, you're the analyst. Analyze this." And it came to this. In management consulting, we always ask, and what is the cause of whatever just happened? In medicine, they don't. They look at a symptom and say, "Oh yeah, I have something for that symptom." Well, I had 15 symptoms, so that would have probably required 15 different medications and maybe 5 more to deal with the side effects.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it's familiar. It's a classic journey of the fallen hero who has to overcome the obstacles. So I stopped being a management consultant, and I decided that I'm going to help people, because there are thousands of guys like me.
Yeah, that is so true. And I will tell you, being a pharmacist, and my wife is a pharmacist also, we don't believe in drugs to treat most chronic diseases because, like you say, there's usually a metabolic problem behind it. And almost all diseases are metabolic in nature, especially if they're chronic. Well, even acute, a lot of acute diseases are metabolic in nature. So if we can keep our bodies metabolically healthy, we can prevent a lot of disease.
Right. So we have these blocking factors that are stopping the natural expression of the homeostatic system to keep you well, healthy, or aging slower. Whereas when you introduce toxins, or if you don't have certain nutrients that are required, you start having problems. Yeah, classic. Yeah, my headache was never caused by a deficiency in Excedrin, right?
Right. That's something we talk about all the time when it comes to like heart disease, for instance, and heart attacks. They're not caused by a Lipitor deficiency.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. And heart attacks are not caused by cholesterol either. I think that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. On top of the lie, there's the dysfunction of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can follow the money on a lot of this stuff.
Mhm.
Because do you really think our system, and maybe I'm getting a little bit off topic, Martin, but do you really think our system really wants to make people healthy and prevent or reverse type 2 diabetes? Probably
Right.
not.
Well, there's the classic statement: cure a disease, lose a customer.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
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 So they don't cure things; they maintain. They maintain symptoms. And I was getting decent symptom maintenance. I was not sneezing nearly as much when I was on the drug, or I wasn't experiencing nearly as much back pain when I was stoned out of my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
Yeah.
so tell us what your companies do to help treat chronic disease. That's different.
Right. So as a metabolic typing advisor, I take people in and ask them the question: are you experiencing anxiety, anger, that sort of stuff? And if they say yes, then I'm tick mark for overly acidic. And then I ask them, when you eat starchy things, what happens? Do you get sleepy or do you get heat up and more anxious? And then they will confirm or deny, right? So at some point, it's like this: acidity starts with first impatience, waking up early, getting a lot of things done, being highly productive, but being quite abrasive doing it. And then deeper in more acidity, we have either anger, like road rage, or we have self-directed things like anxiety about the past or anxiety about the future. And on the alkaline side, we have people who procrastinate a lot. They're more pleasant to be around, but they don't get much done. And if they overdo it, they end up being depressed. So I have people in there asking them, how do you navigate your day, and how does food control your outcomes?
And then, so what is the treatment then?
Well, the treatment is advice. We tell you, so you're already too alkaline, you're waking up depressed, and when you eat, I don't know, your bowl of cereal, you get even more depressed. Now I understand you to be a parasympathetic dominant. Like, we have these labels associated, either autonomic or oxidizer dominant. So I know what to tell them about their behaviors and their outcomes. Some people are stable and some people are less stable. The stable ones don't get easily knocked out with these nutritional shifts, whereas the less stable ones are the ones who suffer. And so those we need to help stabilize their neurological situation. So we have supplements for that. So I can tell you, oh yeah, there's this Canadian product called True Hope that actually helps you stabilize your neurology. You will not be swinging between depression and anxiety as much.
So what a concept. I'm being kind of sarcastic, but what a concept that you tell people that food can affect their mood.
And it does.
Of course it does, right? We talk about it all the time on our podcast, and my wife and I are both pharmacists, yet, we understand that the most important things to our overall health are really pretty basic and pretty simple. And it's sleep, it's diet, and it's our exercise or movement. That's really the basis for how to stay healthy. And if you can prioritize those, and sleep is the most important of them, I believe overall you will be healthy. There's really, in my opinion, no reason to take any kind of drug for any kind of disease before you've optimized those three things.
Right. So you asked me, what do we do? Well, those are the four pillars of problems: toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, trauma. So you mentioned stagnation. That's the lack of movement, lack of exercise. That has to happen. Trauma is something that needs to be resolved. The invisible stuff like EMF is traumatic to the body because the millimeter wave lengths, millimeter waves. Oh, there's another word. I'm trying to get the word out and it's just not coming out. Anyway, 4G and 5G will cause your cells to be flooded by calcium. It's called voltage-gated calcium channel. Calcium is the mineral that signals toward anxiety because it activates the sympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system. The antidote is magnesium, pushing toward parasympathetic. However, if you're in the EMF, you need to do something about it because you're going to be stimulated by it. And that's the current trouble. You also have your past life, as in recent life trouble, whether you have been exposed to all kinds of, I don't know, PTSD is a popular label these days, right? So you need to resolve all of the things that gave you the trauma or the disorder.
That makes sense. So what are some of the, you talked about calcium, magnesium. I'm assuming you recommend magnesium sometimes.
A lot.
Supplements. What are some other supplements for certain chronic diseases that you might recommend?
Right. Well, you need to understand what's wrong with you before you can recommend something, right? Like, for example, the most parasympathizing food is green stuff, chlorophyll, so wheatgrass, barley grass, chlorella, spirulina. So if you have somebody who's quite nervy, you want to push those dark green things on them. Chlorophyll will help to stabilize. Interestingly enough, chlorophyll is rich in magnesium. Whereas if you have somebody who's dopey, sleepy, lazy, unmotivated, you're just going to get them more unmotivated by pushing that.
So then what would you tell them to focus on eating?
The unmotivated people?
Yes.
Well, we need to get their type, right? We need to figure out what makes them less alkaline. So assuming they're the oxidizer, then they would be, it's a slow oxidizer, overly alkaline. Slow oxidizer needs to push starchy foods, bizarre as it may seem. So a keto diet for a slow oxidizer is a recipe for depression. Whereas a keto diet for a parasympathetic is the victory lane for excellent life.
That
so you need to, so without understanding the whether you're left-handed or right-handed or oxidizer or autonomic, if you don't know, then you end up in the wrong place.
Right. So how does the process usually go about somebody getting a hold of you and starting this process?
Well, most people just show up and say, I have a migraine. What can you do for me? Or I suffer from vertigo. And I'm saying, well, listen, vertigo is a complex thing. Your neurology is in trouble and there's inflammation in your brain. We need to do those 4 things: toxicity, not malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. We need to resolve all 4. It's sort of like asking which of the wheels on your car are the essential ones.
Right.
So toxicity, the modern life, right? Whether it's off-gassing or volatile organic compounds, or whether it's some other stuff. What could it be? Lead in the water pipes, mercury in your teeth or in your fish, or cadmium in your cheap jewelry, or arsenic in your silly rice. All those kind of things that end up in your body, they are blocking normal function. We need to get that out. So you will see it, right? You will have symptoms. Some symptoms are because you have a leaky gut. Some are because you have a sluggish liver. Some are because you're constipated all the time. We need to deal with the symptomology one at a time. Let's just say that you have constipation. Well, okay, magnesium will speed things up. Fiber will speed things up. More water, hydration will speed it up.
Exercise.
Oh, God, yes. Go for a walk. 30 minutes a day of walking and your constipation's over.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think some people realize, and maybe they do, and we just don't push it enough, but how important movement really is in life.
Mm-hmm.
We call it exercise, but exercise has become a dirty word. And really, you kind of mentioned it. It's just about moving and moving our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we as humans has thrived for generations and generations, moving almost all day long.
Yeah.
We move during the day and we sleep at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, our farming ancestry was on the field all the time.
Right.
pitchfork or hoe or something in hand, engaged in movement all the time. And the hunters even more so.
I think it's kind of funny how, we talk about exercise and gyms and all the fancy equipment that we have to work out with and in the gyms, but yet, gyms are really a relatively new phenomenon. Gyms have really only gotten big over the last 30 to 40 years. And really mostly they're less than 100 years old. And it's basically, like you were saying, basically in the early 1900s, late 1800s, when people went away from an agronomy type society and they weren't moving as much, a lot of elite people started going to the gym more, or that's where the gym started out. And now it's like everybody has to go to the gym. Well, honestly, you don't have to go to the gym to be healthy. We survived without them for thousands of years.
Right. Well, it's the types of movements that you need to do. Walking alone is fine, but it's not necessarily the whole thing. Yoga is pretty good in the sense that it lets you put all of your joints into their extreme positions and stretch everything and keep things pliable. But it's not enough aerobic activity, so you need to probably try something more aerobic. For many people, interval exercise is really the best thing, where you push yourself for a short amount of time to maximum until you're gasping, and then breathe it out and do it again. It doesn't take a lot. 15, 20 minutes a day of that is usually all that it takes to keep a person fit.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in HIIT training. And really, I think the more we try to mimic what our ancestors did, the better. And mostly our ancestors didn't do HIIT training all day long. They didn't do much of it. They probably, mostly did aerobic type stuff, just walking all day long, moving. And then for a few seconds at a time, every day, they probably had to sprint or run up a hill, or, if they were hunting, they had to chase something. And that's the interval right there.
Yeah, there it is. Maximum effort for a short burst, and then it's
yeah. And I think too, we can get into trouble if we do too much of that. That's why I think if we go back to what our ancestors did, they weren't sprinting all day long, and they probably weren't doing it even 7 days a week. So we just need to get back to what they were doing.
Well, let me dive in a wee bit into the endocrine dominances.
Please, I would love to hear that.
It's shown up in body types, what you look like. There are 3 for men, and women have 1 extra. And the titles or labels we put on it is thyroid, adrenal, and pituitary. And the thyroid type, I'm a thyroid type, is slender hands or bones, slender ankles. If they start putting on weight, it's on the belly first, then on the bum. They are usually tempted by carby foods like potato chips or cookies and cakes. They tend to be slimmer or taller. So on a football team, they'll be the quarterback. They'll be in volleyball and basketball, those type of activities. But they could be short, just small. The adrenal type is different. He stayed tempted by savory foods, gains weight by fat, loses weight by salads. The carby type, the thyroid type, gains weight with carbs and loses it with fat. So just take an example. Take a ketogenic diet. You put the thyroid type on it, he'll be skinny. You put the adrenal type on it, he'll be fat. The adrenal types are built like linebackers, just stocky, deep chests, huge thighs, big bones, ankles this big. They are way more resilient. They have this long endurance, whereas the thyroid types are kind of more mercurial, sprint rather than long distance. And then there is the pituitary. They tend to be built like a Cabbage Patch doll or maybe a Pillsbury Doughboy. Larger head, probably curly hair, very intellectually strong. they tend to be tempted by creamy and fluffy things like ice creams and whipping cream, and they would love to have something like cheesecake or stuff with whipping cream on top. That would be their number one choice. Yogurts and that sort of thing. And to them, their health food is the offal, like heart, tongue, kidney, liver, all the high purine stuff. And in women, there's one more choice, and that's the ovarian dominant.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And they tend to be accentuated feminine characteristics. Their temptation would be hot food, like hot Mexican, hot Thai, hot Indian, and they will be maybe 2 sizes bigger from the waist down, bigger hips, bigger breasts, all of that sort of thing. Yeah, over accentuated femininity, the Kardashian craze.
And so each one of those body types is treated different, I'm assuming.
Which of them is different?
Yes.
Well, so people need to decide whether they want to lose weight or gain weight, and I can tell them how.
I see. Okay.
People need to decide whether they should or shouldn't handle coffee or not. Like the thyroid types don't do well with coffee. So if they insist on drinking coffee, I'm telling them, well, go ahead, but it's against your type.
Right. And that kind of makes sense. So as we wrap this podcast up, Martin, tell us a particular case, a story that you have where you really changed somebody's life. I know there's probably a lot.
No, it's not that hard. We have hundreds, thousands. I just want to pick something short. So there's this lady, she calls me up and she says, my mother died of lupus and I have rheumatoid arthritis. I am eating so healthy. She was a vegetarian. She was eating super healthy, organic, everything. A professional woman. Anyway, we did her type, and she was the ultimate hunter, like fast oxidizer, thyroid dominant. So I said to her, well, here's what you need to do. Change your diet. She threw out everything, well, gave away everything that was in her pantry and her fridge. She was doing everything wrong. 3 months later, she said, not only are my moods under control, my weight's correcting, but also, I didn't tell you this, I can now put on ordinary professional shoes as opposed to running shoes because my toes on my feet are no longer bent out. Right? Not a bad story for that, right?
Right.
Inflammation gone, pain gone, joints restoring back to normal, lots of energy. And that's after she, changed her lifestyle.
And so, Martin, what do you have a passion for?
Well, I like this. I like nutrition, but I'm a lifelong learner, so I keep studying things. I'm into politics. My original degree was at the Institute of Economics, so the big picture stuff interests me. But helping people, that's definitely something I do 12 hours a day.
That's very rewarding. So we're going to stream your website here, and tell us a little bit about your website and how somebody can get a hold of you if they have any questions.
Right. Well, right at the top, there's a phone number. It's in the blue at the top. Call that. If you don't want that, then on bottom right, there's a talk to us here. I don't know if there's any staff currently on support or not, but if you click it, if they're there, they'll start chatting with you. If they're not there, you can leave us a message and we'll get back to you. You're showing one of our most popular sellers, Nanosoma. That thing is just phenomenal. It's based on polycosanol and it fixes, first order, 10% off. That polycosanol stuff, it corrects mitochondria, it corrects cell membranes, and it corrects cell nuclei. So we actually undo all kinds of aging or chronic damage with that. And the Zadiol that you just pulled up, that's pretty cool too. Yep, that green
I
thing.
love it. So,
Yeah.
well, I really love what you're doing, Martin, and get to the root cause of problems instead of just treating symptoms.
Yeah.
That's what we do at Mosley Professional Pharmacy. We've been doing that for 26 years. And our goal is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. And you've helped us realize that goal today, Martin. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to take the time with you.
I appreciate you being on. And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune into our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Thursday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shawn.